Hello, my name is Anita Nainen, and I'm chairperson of the Georgia Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, GIACC. Welcome and good morning to Dr. Swati Kulkarni, Indian Consul General, Atlanta, and our speakers and attendees from the United States. And good evening to our panelists and attendees from India. A few words about GIACC. We have been around for about 20 years. Our mission is to promote Indo-US trade and business opportunities between India and the state of Georgia. We accomplish our mission in various ways. We hold networking events featuring guest speakers on topical issues of interest to our membership. We collaborate on events with local international chambers on topics of mutual interest. We have MOUs with local chambers and international chambers, including the Gwinnett Chamber, the Korean American Chamber, as well as the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce and its Pan-India chapters based out of Mumbai, India. We work closely with the Indian Consulate General, Atlanta. We have been very fortunate to have developed a very good working relationship with Dr. Kulkarni, as well as her predecessors, Mr. Nagesh Singh and Mr. Ajit Kumar. We host business delegations to and from India. Since COVID, we have had to move to a virtual platform by necessity. However, we have hosted several webinars on a range of topics, including immigration, travel, tourism, the impact of COVID on workplace integration, and so on. Our membership primarily consists of small and medium-sized businesses and professionals such as lawyers, bankers, and accountants. We are proud to have a few large corporates, including UPS and ICICI Bank, to name a few. So if you are joining a GIACC event today for the first time, I urge you to visit our website, learn more about our events and programs, and consider joining our chamber through an individual or corporate membership. We are always looking for talented professionals and companies to join and contribute your expertise to our mission of fostering Indo-US business ties. Thank you very much.
Anita, thank you very much. Let me go ahead. Dear participants, thank you very much for joining today's webinar. My name is Raj. I am the president of GIACC. I'm going to be moderating this webinar. I just want to quickly present the agenda and we'll get to the important topic of the day, where our Consul General is going to be talking to us about investment in investing in India. So as far as the agenda is concerned, we have a very simple and straightforward agenda. The first thing I do want to request all of you participants to please keep your audio and video at mute on all times. So right after this, I'm going to be introducing each of the speakers one by one, and we'll have the featured panelist speakers speaking their bit for a few minutes, anything from 7 to 10 minutes. Thereafter, we're going to open the whole panel for questions. So we believe in a very live, interactive session. And so we're going to make sure that we try to get to as many questions as possible, particularly because our CG madam has personally joined us. We would like to take this opportunity for all of you to ask questions. So if you have any questions, please continue to post those questions in the chat in your Zoom control thing, and you can just address it to me, and you will find my name from the drop down, which will say SK Raj, and I will keep all the questions and I will post it at the end. So now I'd like to begin the webinar by introducing our Consulate General. Dr. Swati Kulkarni, the Consul General of Atlanta, India, is a career diplomat with a degree in medicine and surgery. Since 1995, on behalf of the Indian Foreign Service, Dr. Kulkarni has served at Cape Town, South Africa, Muscat, Oman, London, UK, Mauritius, Spain, Mumbai, India, in various capacities such as Consul General, First Secretary, and Under Secretary, overseeing several countries, including Austria, Cyprus, Greece, Switzerland, Portugal, Ireland, and Spain. I present you with great pleasure, Dr. Swati Kulkarni.
Very good morning to everybody. It's always a pleasure to interact with GI Georgia India Chamber of Commerce, the board members and organizers. Thank you, Mr. Raj. Thank you, Anita ji. And thanks to everybody, because I know you guys are very active in doing lots of work on encouraging India and US businesses. So it's always a great pleasure to share our thoughts, our the developmental efforts taken by India so far. So I will start with my little PowerPoint presentation. It's only 3 slides, but we will speak on each slide in depth. The first and foremost, you all must be aware that we will be celebrating India at 75, and this will be done on 15th August 2022. So, Azadi Ka Amrut Mahotsav, this is the title which our Prime Minister has used to describe it, and the Prime Minister has inaugurated this Azadi Ka Amrut Mahotsav on 12th of March at Sabarmati. So just 75 weeks before August 15, 2022. As we got independence on August 15, 1947, our democratic journey, our economic journey, our journey on various fronts have been very, very encouraging and a very, very successful one. So over the period of years, India has emerged as a very strong nation, and today it's a bright spot in the Committee of Nations. So our current anticipation to have a 5 trillion economy by 2025 is based on extraordinary resilience shown by our various institutions, including democratic institutions, the burgeoning middle class, and a huge domestic market. So on the right side, you can see that there is a small box where we can see that India has done a major jump as far as ease of doing business is concerned. So in last decades or so, after opening our economy in 1991, we have seen lots of reforms. The last 5-6 years, again, we have seen a significant momentum in having more and more reforms so that our economy gets more flourishing, more encouraging for inbound investment. So what we have seen is Make in India, Clean India, Digital India, Startup India, those initiatives were taken. Important tax initiative was taken, goods and services tax, where now we have one tax, one market for entire nation. Then there were legislations like new bankruptcy law, new IPR regime. So all this, including the e-biz single IT window, all this has created a very good environment for inbound investment in India. On the left side, you can see there that we are first time top 50 innovative economies. So India has become innovative India. And why is that? Because we are well known for our talent. We are well known for our young demography and their digital skills. So we have 3 C's, that is creativity, competitiveness, and cost effectiveness. With this, we have created critical niches in IT sector, and we are poised to become a knowledge economy due to our frugal innovations and other aspects. You can also see on left side below there is box which we are seeing there. India is emerging as a major startup hub. We do have a big ecosystem for startups. Right now we have more than 30,000 startups which have created $90 billion in value. And we anticipate by 2025 we will have 1 million startups that will create $1 trillion in value. So India's metal lion, Make in India logo, it's really walking fast. And we want all of you, the Indian diaspora, to take advantage of so many opportunities in India. As far as India's developmental efforts are concerned, the first and foremost that comes when anybody takes India's name is the largest democracy, the largest population, full of young people, full of diversity. So that's what the image of India that comes in front of us. And now that we are facing the COVID challenge, our government has, taken this crisis in stride and tried to see whether we can have opportunities created while dealing with this pandemic. And that's how the attitude of the government has been, and that's why government acted proactively and timely. And we have given a very coordinated and comprehensive response to this pandemic based on our constant testing, tracing, containment zones. And that is why WHO has also appreciated India's response. As far as broad timing of lockdown, unlocking the lockdown is concerned, it was also right. So the recovery path which we are seeing will be much more faster and robust for India. So during the COVID, we did have certain healthcare challenges which we did successfully to ramp our healthcare infrastructure. Then our Indians all over the world were stranded. So far, we have brought them staggering number 6 million Indians have come back to India as of date, over to that number again. Then we also have what we call that Vande Bharat mission, which was the largest evacuation which we saw. Then we also have a vaccine diplomacy. We have vaccinated over 60 million people so far in India, and we have given over 64 million doses to 83 plus countries all over the world, starting with neighborhood first policy and then commitment to special relationships. Not only we gave vaccines, we also gave hydroxychloroquine, PPE kits, and those paracetamol earlier. So what we are doing with this, we are branding image of India as the pharmacy of world. We are telling whole world that yes, we are good, responsible citizens. We are stakeholders in this international, committee of nations where India will deliver its vaccine production and the capacity for the benefit of humanity. And the Atmanirbhar Bharat component is also there because not one, but 2 vaccines are there which are made in India. So our Prime Minister famously said that wherever India will have capabilities, we will deliver it for the benefit of humanity. So that is why we are seeing this big, huge vaccine diplomacy drive, and it's one of the landmark as far as our diplomatic efforts are concerned. So as far as our economic response to the COVID pandemic is concerned, it is also again a very, right as far as and a positive and a beneficial to our people, our population, and it was two-pronged approach. One step during the early period of COVID was to give liquidity infusion, to give cash direct transfer to our vulnerable sections, and this was done in a smart and targeted way where most poor got the most help. And thanks to technology, with Jam Trinity, that is the Janadhana Yojana, where banking for all, Aadhaar and mobile, we could give at the click of button 420 million people direct cash benefits, and they were given immediately and directly to them. No middleman, no nothing. Again, we gave 80 million people free cooking gas. We gave free food to 800 million people. So these are staggering numbers, and we have done it efficiently. We have done it immediately. We have done it directly using the technology and all those things which were at our disposal. Again, the government used in a second pronged approach. The first one was this direct infusion, and the second one, government introduced lot many structural reforms. So the first tranche of reforms focused on growth sectors like agriculture, power, atomic energy, defense. And there we are encouraging private public partnership so that a lot of investment comes there. Then we are also in agriculture trying to create an e-economic market platform so that farmers can sell it anywhere in India. Power also, again, we will have private people who can invest there so that it can be, the experiment will be carried out in union territories and then it will be replicated. The government gave incentives for MSMEs because 100 million people are employed there and it contributes 29% to GDP. So lot many incentives have been given to MSMEs, again to incentives to manufacturing. Government focused on the fast track investment. So how to do the fast track investment? So through Invest India, we can do it. Then we also have empowered group of secretaries what we call EGOs. They fast track any investment that comes to India. Then it comes to project development cells in that respective ministry, and then it gets to the state level wherever it is. So the whole supply or chain, what we can call, it has been basically fast tracked if the investment is coming to India. Then government announced new education policy, which is bold and a very path-breaking and transformational policy, which is suited to 21st century needs. Then government gave new tax policy where it will be painless and seamless to give your tax to the government, where technology again will be used. It will become transparent and honoring the honest. That also is there. So we also again saw product linked scheme, those incentive scheme for 13 sectors where mobile telephony and things like that, the Apple can have their offices in India, and we can purchase the phones in a cost effective way in India itself, and so many other sectors. So all this has uh, given basically almost 5 mini budgets to us and brought out the reforms which were long pending and overdue for us. The union budget, which was that was given by our finance minister, it was so historic, and it carried forward this process and carried forward the momentum, where it again focused on healthcare and wellness and preventive health. That was really important because of the COVID and other circumstances which we encountered during the last 1 year. So the government is focusing on preventive health in a big way, where we will have a Jal Shakti mission, the universal water supply, and other various institutes, viral institutes and other, which will be ramped up to deal with certain contingencies which we may have in future. The other things where the budget is focusing on is how to walk the talk as far as the new education policy is concerned, where we are going to encourage 100 top universities to set up campuses in India. So legislative framework required for that, and various other recommendations like Higher Education Commission, National Research Foundation, all those things, the legislative framework, we anticipate that will be introduced soon. And this budget is doing provision for all those aspects. On infrastructure also, again, the budget has focused. It has focused on skilling, startups, and all those sorts of things. Why? Because we want to have the holistic and inclusive development, and the government's mantra is to have minimum government and maximum governance. So that's why we encourage you to tell your members, act as a force multiplier and invest in India. And this is the right time, because India's economy, it's even though it's contracted by 7.7% during COVID in the last financial year, it will rebound. It will come back because of the large vaccination drive, the large incentives and reforms which we have talked right now. And that is why the growth will be in double digits in this financial year, or after the next quarter or so, it will rebound. And that is why we feel that this is a time for you guys to make lots of investment in India, because there are lots of opportunities as far as getting dividends on your investments are concerned. Then I just give you a little brief on India-US relations. See, our relationship is bipartisan. It enjoys a strong popular support. People-to-people contacts are very, strong, because they have helped us in creating knowledge network. Then it's based on shared attributes where we are democracies, we have open society, open markets, we are pluralistic societies, and it is based on frequent interaction between our leadership. Our Prime Minister spoke with the President Biden 2 times, and attended a virtual summit also recently, the Quad Summit. So, and also the interactions on minister level, the official level, diplomatic level, it continuously goes on. So there are frequent interactions, and we have more than 50 intergovernmental dialogue mechanisms where some activity or other goes on. The bilateral trade is an important component between our two relationship, and It stood at $150 billion in 2019. We hope the momentum will continue on this, and we want to achieve a target of at least 400, 500 billion bilateral trade sooner than later. Then another aspect of our relationship, which we saw during COVID, was again on India-US scientific collaboration, where we collaborated on vaccine production and things like that. So we have 200 projects in the science and technology sector, where our both, the agencies are working, the health agencies from both countries are doing lots of work in that field on those projects. Then the new areas of growth where we have seen is the defense and the agriculture and other energy collaboration. The defense collaboration is set to cross $21 billion, where joint exercises, training amongst the officials, maritime security, counter piracy, how to counter the piracy. There, lots of collaboration is happening. And then energy trade, we are focusing on conventional energy resources and renewable also. So it is also set to cross $20 billion during last 4 years. We have seen a lot of momentum in that. We have 4 million strong Indian diaspora. We do have 200,000 plus students. That's another important asset for us. So as far as US is concerned, US has a technological competence. India has talent and skills. And that's why we have lots of complementarities, because all our students are in STEM and master's programs that can bring value. And our own people who have established nice businesses here, they can also help us in going back. And the way we have done Silicon Valley in Bangalore, we can have another now, revolution which can happen in India is in the medical field and startups. So your investment, your interest will help us in ushering those revolutions in India. That's what I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Madam CG, thank you very much. That was very insightful. We already have a bunch of questions coming on the chat window. So I'm assuming that you're staying with us through the webinar so we can ask the questions at the end where they've also seen the other portions, madam. Okay, thank you very much, madam. So just for the information of all the participants, I do want to let you know, give me 1 second, let me just share the screen here, that a recording of today's webinar will be available in our website as early as tomorrow. So if you missed any portions of it at the beginning or the later portion, please don't worry. You can always go to our website and then you can see the full webinar in its entirety. So I'm going to now request my colleague Anita, our chairperson, to introduce our next panelist.
It is my privilege now to welcome Mr. Uday Vaid, Partner Direct Tax KNAV. Uday Vaid is a lead partner in the Global Tax Practice Group at KNAV based out of the Mumbai office. Uday has held key positions in the Big Four accounting firms, including as National Head of Tax with KPMG India, Global Tax Partner of Anderson India, and co-head of tax at RSM India. His expansive career spans over 30 years, focusing on M&As, inbound and outbound tax structuring, cross-border transactions, and global reorganizations. He has co-authored a book, which has been published by Bloomsbury UK, and he has interacted extensively with the Central Board of Direct Taxes and regulatory bodies in India by making representations to them on international and domestic tax and regulatory issues. Welcome, Uday, and I hand it over to you to share your presentation with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Raj, and thank you, GICC, for providing me this opportunity. CG Madam, Dr. Swati Kulkarni really set the ball rolling in terms of India as the foreign investment destination. In fact, she went through some of the COVID measures, and under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in fact, COVID was used as an opportunity to unleash some of the reforms for foreign investments, including defense and insurance and few other sectors. So India is very pro foreign investment. US has been the major trading partner for us, and we really love doing business both inbound and outbound. My focus is here inbound, whereas you as a foreign investor would be investing as a US investor investing in India. Of course, you make profits and you want to make sure that you are able to repatriate those incomes. So I thought I will, in the given time, focus a little bit on various repatriation strategies from India. uh, India does have foreign exchange control regulations, but as far as the trade is concerned, almost all the current account transactions, and foreign investment related repatriations are almost freely repatriable. As usual, possibly when you earn profits at the year end, you want to distribute dividends, and dividends are freely repatriable, subject to withholding taxes. For the India US, uh, for the US investor, the withholding tax rate for the dividend is reduced from 20 to 15%. And of course, you can take a tax credit back in the US. So dividend can be freely repatriated, whether it's an interim dividend or a foreign dividend or a final dividend. Companies have also used share buyback strategies in the past, and there are certain limits within which the buyback is permissible. Buyback again is subject to tax at about 23%. So one could use the traditional repatriation measures like dividend and share buyback as a means of repatriating the profits, freely repatriable, subject to withholding taxes. Of course, when the US company provides some technology, or charges the royalty for that, or seconds technical people and earns the technical service fees, or supports and provides management fees, all these are current account transactions freely repatriable under the exchange control regulations. Interestingly, for the royalty and the technical fees, the withholding tax rate is just 10%. In fact, lower than the tax treaty rate between India and US. And the Indian company gets a deduction, whereas the US recipient gets taxed on a concessional rate, both for royalty and fees for technical service. So this is one of the very easy mechanism of repatriating the profits, of course, subject to rendering services or providing the technology. The last part on this is, as a part of the foreign investment policy, even the convertible debentures are possible. So you could possibly get the interest rather than waiting for the dividend at the year end when you invest in the form of equity. Uh, the FEMA, the exchange control regulation, permits the issuance of the compulsory convertible debentures on an automatic basis, and the interest so paid is deductible to the Indian company and taxed at the rate of 10 or 15% concessional rate under the treaty. For certain infrastructure projects, again, on the external commercial borrowings, the interest withholding is just 5%, and I think it's a very important mechanism for large infrastructure projects to invest into India. Can you move to the next slide, please? Just want to touch upon one another very important kind of a initiative that government of India has used in the past to form an international financial services center. It is at Gandhidham in Gujarat, the city of our Prime Minister. In fact, this is like IFSI is in India, technically in India, but not in India. It's like uh, an export or an outside offshore center. A number of tax benefits are available for setting units in IFSI, tax holiday for 10 years for the business profit, exemption from capital gains tax, from customs duty, from service tax, the GST, the VAT, and stamp duty. Number of tax benefits as if you are like an offshore center. In fact, this year's budget, Finance Bill 2021, which has just become the Act, Finance Act, has made some enabling provisions to make the IFSI working. And some of those offshore funds which have invested into India, they can relocate to the IFSI. And government of India is really encouraging the offshore funds and the fund industry, banking and financial industry, and insurance sector, plus the other sectors to invest into IFSI. Technically, you are as if you are operating in an offshore sector. So major benefits for IFSI, and I would encourage people to take note of this and set up the units in IFSI in addition to your normal venture. So I think I just possibly would stop here, and maybe we'll be happy to take questions, Raj, at the end. Thank you.
Uday, thank you very much. I know, our participants have a bunch of questions for you and Madam CG already. So there are going to be a lot of questions. As soon as we finish our next portion of the panelists, we'll certainly be sure to take you up on those, Uday. Thank you very much. What I'd like to do now is request my co-host, our chairperson Neeta, to introduce the next panelist. So let me go ahead and get it up here.
It is my privilege now to introduce Anusha Bhagat, Assistant Manager, Invest India. Anusha Bhagat is an Assistant Manager with Invest India, the National Investment Promotion and Felicitation Agency promoted by the Government of India. As we probably know, Invest India is the execution agency for the Government of India's Make in India and Startup India initiatives. Anusha is responsible for facilitating investments from the United States and Eastern Europe across multiple sectors. She is also an active member of the Invest India Social Impact Initiative, and she works with the Ministry of Women and Child Development of India on policy, advisory, and strategic initiatives. She holds a bachelor's degree in economics and finance from Ashoka University, India, and she is here now to share with us what Select India is all about. Thanks and welcome, Anusha.
Thanks a lot for the introduction. Hi, everyone. A very good morning. I am pleased to be here. And thank you so much for having me. I would just like to share my screen now. Give me 1 minute.
Anusha, we already have your content on the screen. Did you want to share something else?
Yeah, I exactly had a presentation, if that's okay.
Okay, I'll go ahead and
if you could just give me permission, that would be great.
Please go ahead. You can share your screen now, Anusha. And just for everybody's information, Anusha was supposed to join with her colleague Aditya on this, and he's unable to join us today because he tested positive for COVID yesterday. So in an abundance of caution, we kind of excuse him, I guess. So Anusha is going to run the show by herself. Anusha, go ahead, please.
Sure. Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes, we can see.
All right, perfect. So what we'll be talking about today is I'll be taking you over a macro overview of India and our view as India as an emerging economy and the kind of potential it offers to foreign investors. We shall also be touching base upon some of the key initiatives that the government of India has announced to make India a global manufacturing hub. To begin with, what I'd like to give you all a visual depiction of, the transformation that has taken place in India in the past few decades. So if you see here on your screen, you'll see the Bombay terminal or, the Mumbai terminal back in 2013 and how it used to look. It used to have maybe an average footfall of 30 million a year at that time. Fast forward to about 5 years, this is the Bombay terminal in 2018. And this is the international airport that you see with state-of-the-art infrastructure having a footfall of more than 50 million a year. This transformation is not restricted to tier 1 cities such as New Delhi or Mumbai or Bangalore, but is also being envisioned or being seen in tier 2 cities such as Meerut. So over here, you see, a highway connecting Delhi to a tier 2 city, Meerut. And today you see what this highway looks like. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is the transformation that is taking place in India right now. Not only are we a growing emerging economy, we are also the world's largest smartphone data consumer, the second largest on the global retail index, as well as one of the world's most emerging consumer markets. India is also a top market flourishing across various segments. As you see on the screen, we are, the second largest smartphone market with about 150 million shipments. We are a large, fast growing e-commerce market. We have about 4 million passenger and commercial vehicles sold annually, and so on and so forth for other sectors as well. This is what you see on the screen is the Make in India campaign of the government and the 24 core sectors that have been recognized by the government. India offers a huge opportunity across these 24 sectors that you see on the screen. There is from where this stems from, I can give you a brief background. There is a recognition amongst the government that, good economics is at the heart of good governance. So as part of the Make in India campaign of the government, this was launched way back when Mr. Narendra Modi took charge of the government of India. These sectors that you see on the screen right now present a cumulative opportunity of about $5 trillion US. And this campaign has also been envisioned to make manufacturing 25% of the Indian GDP. And that's where we are aiming to get at by 2025. Moving on to the next slide, despite the COVID-19 pandemic and despite, the hit the economy has taken and, worldwide, we have seen that India has remained a top destination for foreign investors despite the COVID-19 pandemic. While we see from various figures, comparing FDI that various countries have received, we see that India has recorded a FDI surge of about 13%, whereas you see in other economies, it has actually gone down. And this is the number that we have, recorded over the past year. Moving on to what makes India a conducive, economy and a conducive environment for consumers as well as investors. Ease of doing business has been a huge initiative of the government of India. It has been a key focus area for making, India the global hub that we see today. Since this government took power in about 2014, about 12,000 policy reforms have actually taken place at both the center as well as the state level. In the past 4 years, we see that India has actually jumped 67 places in the world's ease of doing business rankings. And similarly, India's rankings on other global indices have also improved. Among the various macroeconomic reforms that have actually contributed to make India a conducive environment for doing business and to contribute to its ease of doing business, these are some of the key reforms that the government has focused on. So you'll see, faster company registration, building permit approvals, whereas simplified tax reforms in the form of GST, as well as an overall business-friendly, environment to do business in terms of friendly labor reforms, competitive federalism, as well as, investor handholding and facilitation support. As was also stressed upon earlier in the presentation, that India has adopted 3 key measures of fast-tracking investments. These include the EGOS, which is the Empowered Group of Secretaries, to ensure the timely grounding of projects in India and to ensure that no project is actually stuck within any within any government department, central or be it state. We have the single window clearance, which is actually getting launched in about 2 weeks, which is a single window investment clearance cell that will provide end-to-end facilitation and support, including pre-advisory, as well as facilitating clearance at the central as well as the state level. Lastly, we have the project development cells at each ministry. These are, investor support agencies that have been housed within all of the 25 line ministries, in line with the Make in India campaign, to also ensure that, the government actually helps investors take off the investable projects and supports investors throughout their investment cycle. This is actually from a survey that Invest India had undertaken along with JLL. The name of the report is The Great Places for Manufacturing in India. And what our team did was, carried on a survey with the competitive, other Southeast Asian emerging economies alongside, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam along various parameters. And how this was also done was by, in initiating a survey amongst Fortune 500 companies who are present in all of these countries and how they see the economies, weigh in vis-a-vis each other. So you see India has emerged as, the top choice amongst various parameters, as you see, maybe ease of getting credit, companies embracing disruptive ideas, as well as the new corporate tax rate for manufacturing concerns. Moving on, what I actually wanted to really stress upon is the production-linked incentive schemes that have been announced by the government of India. The key goal of this scheme as a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative or the Self-Reliant India movement is to make Indian manufacturers globally competitive, make India a very strong hub for exports, drive innovation and cutting-edge technology, as well as leveraging economies of scale. So you will see on the screen here the top 10 or 13 sectors that have been actually approved of having their own PLI schemes in order to boost domestic manufacturing and exports, and also drive the country's.
Anusha,
sorry
to interrupt. I know there's so much content that you want to share and our participants want to see, but in the interest of time, could I request you to wrap it up if possible in the next 30 seconds? That way we will open it for the Q&A, and as a Q&A, our participants will be happier to, because there are a bunch of questions already coming on the chat. I would rather you respond to that, and we can share this on the website if you don't mind.
Sure, no worries. So just probably to end in the interest of time, this is Invest India. This is, I'll quickly introduce it. We are the National Investment Promotion and Facilitation Agency of the Government of India. We provide various services to all foreign investors who work with us, such as business advisory, strategy and implementation, aftercare, location assessment, issue resolution, etc. We have teams which work across sectors and across states, and this is also a pro bono service, so we do not charge anything to the foreign investors who are working with us. This next slide would also just give you an encapsulation of all the services that we provide. In the interest of time, I won't go over them, but I'm happy to take any questions at the end of the presentation. So thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Anusha. Just stay there. What I'm going to do is let me just share my screen so folks can see how they can ask the questions. So give me a second. Let me get it here. Okay, so while we have that in the background, let me get all of you panelists back on the listing. Uday, if you don't mind, if you can also unmute, let's see. Yes. Okay, excellent. Uday, can you also join?
Yes, please.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Okay, hold on 1 second. Okay, so for all the participants, I just want to again emphasize that if you have any questions, please ask those questions through your Zoom chat window and just address it only to me, and then I will go ahead and ask it. Also in this slide, you will see two information that are really important. One is that where the webinar and the full recording will be available, and you will see that at www.giacc.net, it's not .com. And if your questions are not answered for want of time, I encourage you to send us an email to the email address that you see on the screen. Again, if you're not able to note down the email ID, just go to the website, and from the webinar also you can pull it up, and just send us the question and tell us for which panelist it is, and we'll be sure to ask, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and start asking questions and stop sharing the screen. Again, panelists, all three of you, thank you so much for your time. And there is just a lot of excitement on the questions. So the first question is for our Consul General, Madam. So The question is actually, Madam, for folks like even myself, right? We are US citizens with OCA card holders, and we are all very eager to invest back in India. How can your office help folks like us in the business community to invest in India? What role does your office plays, and how could you help us with that?
It's a very relevant question. See, what happens in consulate, we have a department which looks after the encouragement of Indian and American businesses. What happens, the small businesses, if they are keen to do it, they will generally approach us because the big businesses do have their own sort of systems and things like that. So we are very happy to cater to the small businesses and the medium businesses. So what happens, they come to us and give us inquiries that we want to procure such and such product, or we want to invest in such and such way in India, how you can help us. So based on your query, we can help you to connect with, let's say, Invest India, or we can connect you to Guidance Tamil Nadu, or certain bodies which are relevant to your particular query. So if it's a, there are various export promotion councils also. So those bodies, we will make sure that they are also in the loop, and then we help you to find out which is the best place for doing your business. See, for example, there were some companies also, they want to procure some items from India. That also we help. Certain US companies are asking us about the authentication of certain Indian exporters. That also we do. There are commercial disputes. That also we do. So lots of menu which we have where we can help you out. So you can send us an email to this effect, and case-to-case basis, we can help you out as per your query.
Madam CJ, can you share that email ID to us? Because most of our participants are, where do we contact? If you don't mind sharing that email ID, that will be very helpful.
Oh, yes, we are sending it on your chat box. It's com.atlanta@mba.gov.in. So you can send it. And in fact, we have also introduced chatbot. We are using technology. If you are interested in approaching us and you don't have email, our chatbot appears on our website. There are lots of things where we help you, like passport, visa, renunciation, but none of the above is also option there.
If I understand correctly, tomorrow you're having a session where you're presenting about this chatbot and how it works, correct?
Oh yes, that chatbot has a very trendy name. Dost hai na, kahin bhi, kabhi bhi, anytime, anywhere.
Fantastic. We'll be sure to share that information to all the participants so tomorrow they can join in. Thank you very much, madam. We'll come back to you, and we have the next question is for Uday. Uday, if you don't mind unmuting your audio. Yes. So this question is, Uday, this again also, a bunch of us, many of us folks, settled in US, living here for a long time, OCA card holders, US citizens. If they have invested in an immovable property, and let's say it's being sold, it could be inherited, or you have invested in the past while you are still an Indian citizen, and now you've become a US citizen since then, and you want to sell that property. How do you actually remit the sale proceeds back to US, and what kind of impact on taxation will it have?
Yeah, this is a very common question from number of NRIs and OCI. Because they always have the route, either they bought the property, as you rightly said, Raj, or inherited in many cases. So India does allow repatriation of such sale proceeds. So whenever you sell the property in India, first it is subject to the necessary taxes, which is the capital gains tax on the sale of the property, which is about 20%, assuming the property is held for a long time, more than 3 years. Once the necessary taxes have been paid, then the repatriation is allowed to all the NRIs up to what is called the $1 million scheme. So you can repatriate up to $1 million per year, per financial year, which runs from April to March, because India runs the financial year, per person. So if you have an NRO account, the non-resident ordinary account, that's where the funds get deposited at the first place. And from that, up to $1 million per year. And $1 million includes not only sale of property, but all other repatriation, which you can repatriate. So I think that's the part. And,
so with the way things are, Uday, I'm assuming that, properties can sometimes be in excess of $1 million. So let's say the value of the property is $1.5 million. I mean, theoretically, I'm hypothetically throwing that. In that case, do you transfer, like, for example, let's say you sell in 2021, do you repatriate $1 million this year and then hold it in that account and then repatriate next year? Is that allowed?
Yes, that is possible. Absolutely. That's how it is allowed. $1 million is on automatic basis. Okay, you don't need any approval. Once the taxes have been paid and your remitting banker is satisfied, you can repatriate 1 million in this year and $500,000 next year. If you want, for whatever reason, full 1.5 million to remit, then you need to go to Reserve Bank of India for a specific approval. And on a business case and a special approval, even 1.5 million can go. But generally, people will use the $1 million because that's easy.
Got it. Thank you very much, Uday. I will come back. I do have a lot of questions for you as well. So let me ask Anusha. Anusha, we hear a lot about this story of how Tesla ended up investing in India. And I understand you had some role in it. If you don't mind sharing that story, it will be very interesting because everybody's just curious. So we just want to know how you guys managed that. And if you don't mind, unmute your microphone and share that story.
Sure. But I know we're very excited about having Tesla on board, and there has been a lot of communication as well as in the news that Tesla is going to be setting up a manufacturing facility, and also they have big plans for India. But as far as the story goes, there is really not much that I can really share at this point. From our discussions, we can tell you that they were looking at India for a while, and it's great that they have chosen 2021 to enter India. It also gives the investor community a huge boost. And I think with what their thought process was that EV now being such a core focus for Indian governments as well as various state governments, and the huge push that has been coming to the whole sector, I think it's a positive time for them to be here. So that's really all that I can say at this and share at this point.
Thank you very much, Anusha. That is very exciting, and I know the Prime Minister had announced programs of making India very green, and I think we could certainly all the cities and everywhere India could benefit in electrification, in electric vehicles, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much for that initiative. The next question is for our Consul General, Madam, again, if she's available. Oh, thank you, Madam. So, excellent. So one of the questions that a participant has asked is, do OCA cardholders have the privilege of owning a business or startup in India if they're a citizen elsewhere? And the implication here is that without having somebody in India, like for example, I know, like for example, if a private limited company in India, you must have a director in India. So, but other businesses, a startup business or other business, could, in theory, somebody as an OCA card holder start and invest in a business by themselves in India?
Oh yes, they can do. OCI is the way it's a lifelong visa for a person of Indian origin. So they, apart from not voting and other things, they can very well invest in India. They can have a startup. Many people are doing it. Just now we were having interaction with the governor of Alabama, and we were sharing, my ambassador was sharing thoughts. So he told us that in pharmaceutical company in USA, the people who were here, they became, US citizens, and then later on they have got OCA, and now they are married and they are a couple. They have done a startup in pharmaceutical. So that can happen. So during the COVID, you will be surprised that in India, the startup ecosystem is moving so fast. It's a high time Mr. Raj, you also should do some startup or something. I'm telling you, during COVID, we have seen 12 startups that have become unicorn. That is 1 billion in value.
Madam, so that brings up to my next question. Not only you pointed out, hey, I should do it. I am actually in the process of investing right now, a fairly sizable project. So that brings me to this follow-up question, right? I was sincerely hoping that the bureaucratic red tape at the local level will be a little less, but it kind of feels like it's as bad as ever. So can your office help investors like me who are now here. We don't have a whole lot of people to help us navigate this thing there. So is your council office able to help folks like us in any way?
Oh yes, we are only for that. See, we will handhold you. We will help you out. Give us your instances where it is you are getting some bottlenecks or something. We will approach Invest India. We will approach a particular ministry. We will approach particular state, and we can help you out. We will make sure that your business thrives.
Thank you, ma'am. And I'm going to take up on your offer, and I'm sure many participants on this webinar are also going to take up on that offer. Thank you very much. Uday,
Okay.
I have a question for you, Uday. This question is, are there any special rules and benefits for NRIs to invest in India? Madam CG clarified for OCA card holders, but are there any special rules specifically for NRIs as a general?
No, so general, any foreign investment, whichever is permissible to any non-resident, including a pure US company or a US national, is permissible also for an NRI or now the OCI card holder, a person of Indian origin or Indian citizen with staying in the US. So there are no special kind of a rule as far as business is concerned. There used to be an NRI OCB scheme many years back, which has been done away. However, they can invest in immovable properties, which a normal a pure US citizen would not be able to invest, or there are certain investment in stock markets directly, portfolio investments. Those are special rules for them, which used to be the case even in the past, or in fixed deposits in the banks, which are passive investment. As far as active investments are concerned, is like any other US investor. Having said that, if an OCI, I mean NRI is one of the NRI is OCI, they want to invest in India on a non-repatriation basis, right? Then it is like any other Indian resident. So it's been treated as par with, if you want to keep that money in India and do business, then there are no rules. As good as an Indian resident, no exchange control regulations. Of course, that $1 million scheme still is applicable for the repatriation. So number of people then you can use your India funds also. Number of people have those funds which they can use as far as good as Indian citizen or Indian residents would be involved. Yeah.
Fantastic. Uday, thank you very much. We just have time for just one last question, and we'll pose it to Anusha. Anusha, the question is actually, how does your organization Invest India, quickly, if you can share with us, how can our participants reach out to you and connect with you, and what role will you play in helping an investor, potential investor from US in India? If you don't mind unmuting and
Yeah. I was just doing that. So yeah, thank you for your question. We have teams which support investors across various investment life cycles. So at the time from when you're starting to think about investing in India, our teams will support you with all the market research and the investment climate across that sector in the state. Then once, I'm sorry, give me a minute.
We all know the challenges of being on Zoom and live, somebody not realizing it.
I am so sorry. There is some construction work going at home, but yeah, I was saying that, our teams support investors throughout the cycle. So we have teams which support investors, say from the Americas region, from Europe, from, other Asian countries. So that's how essentially we are structured. Then we will have our experts who are, from various sectors, say, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, etc. Whatever it is the company or the firm is looking at. So essentially that's how we're structured. I'm happy to drop in my email ID on the chat right now, as well as
please go ahead and share that. Thank you.
I will do that. And also just another point, I heard our discussions on startups. We also have a very active Startup India team, which actually helps, companies and firms with navigating the startup ecosystem in India with rules, regulations, as well as any handholding support they need with the government. So, that's about it. And we're happy to also connect you with them in case any queries on the Startup India front, come forth.
Thank you very much, Anusha. I'm now going to request my fellow GACC Executive Committee member, Amber Mehta, who is a secretary, to propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Raj. Ladies and gentlemen, Good afternoon to those in the US and good evening to those attending from India. It gives me an immense pleasure to deliver this vote of thanks for this event to all. I would like to thank our chief guest, Counsel General Dr. Swati Kulkarni, who honored this webinar event with her opening remarks. Big thanks to our panelists for taking out time to make presentation here. Uday Ved for his insights into repatriation strategies from India, Anusha for telling us about Invest India and the various opportunities to invest in India. We truly appreciate it. Many thanks to all the participants from attending for attending this webinar. Hope you found this webinar useful. Last but not the least, thanks to my colleagues Anita, Raj, and other executive members of GICC. Big applause for you guys for helping me organizing this webinar. Once again, I thank one and all present here. Have a nice day.
Thank you all. That concludes the webinar. Again, tomorrow you can access, today evening or tomorrow you can access this webinar in its full recording either at our website www.giacc.net. If your questions were not answered, we are sorry, but please go ahead and send your questions to the email ID we shared, and we'll be sure to pass it on to the panelists and get it for you. Thank you. Have a great day.